Hello, everybody. Welcome to Week 6 in Division II football. IUP took control of the PSAC West with a win in its rivalry game against Slippery Rock. Winning IUP coach Paul Tortorella will join us, and he'll discuss his team's win. Sioux Falls put itself in great position in the NSIC by winning the key to the city in their annual battle with Augustana. Grand Valley kept pace in the GLEAK with a convincing win in the Battle of the Valleys. And we'll also talk about what is going on in the Gulf South Conference. So we have all that and more tonight on Inside D2 Football. Thanks for joining us, along with Devin Albertson, Chuck Bittner, Chris Ferguson, Tony Nicolette, Justin Palizzi, and Matt Wicki. I am Brandon Meisner. Again, thank you for being here with us tonight. So our top story tonight, IUP survived the rainy weather and a late Slippery Rock push to beat the number 12 team in one of the best rivalries in Division II. Chuck, with IUP winning at home over the Rock, are they now the clear favorite to win the PSAC West?
They are the clear favorite for this week. And we'll talk in a few minutes about what's ahead for them and also the same situation they were in last year around the same time. So there's still a lot of work to be done for IUP, but yeah, they're definitely the clear favorite when you knock off Slippery Rock. This is one of the best rivalries in Super Region 1 in the northeast part of the country.
No, in the country. It's one of the best in the country. Don't understate it. It really is.
It is. There's a long history there, and there's a little bit of the hate that's kind of built into it. But really, I think the significance of that rivalry is, when you go back over the last quarter century or so, the winner of that game most likely was in the driver's seat to win the PSAC West Division. So that's really the significance of that game, the significance of that rivalry. And this one was very interesting because if you look at the stat sheet for this game, it's almost identical. You could nearly swap both teams and not know which was which because it was split so evenly down the middle. But the biggest difference in this game was red zone performance. IUP was 3 for 4 in the red zone, 3 touchdowns. Slippery Rock was 1 for 3 in the red zone, and those 2 failures that they didn't score in the red zone, those were interceptions that were thrown in the end zone, where IUP's defense was able to come up with a pick to kill a scoring threat. So, if Slippery Rock finishes those drives with points, this game probably plays out very differently from the first quarter onwards. So. Really a huge factor in that game and definitely a great win for IUP. I think it should get IUP into the national rankings this week. I've had them in my rankings for the last 2 weeks. I think we should see them in the rankings this coming week as well.
All right, so Paul Tortorella has been the head coach, he's been at IUP for 28 season, and he has been the head coach for 5 years, and he joins us now to talk about his win over the Rock. And Coach, thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate you being here.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, Coach, your counterpart, Coach Lutz at Slippery Rock, had said in his post-game comments that the story of the first half was turnovers and the story of the second half was Dwayne Brown. And I want to ask you about both of those things, but let's start with the defense. Those turnovers really were the difference in this game. When you were breaking down Slippery Rock during the week, was there anything you saw on film or anything that you saw for your game prep that made you think that you could get a couple of turnovers?
Well, I think we were fortunate on the first one. It was a deflected pass. They had been a pretty run-heavy team inside the 5 on 1st and 10, but they tried to throw an RPO, and our field corner broke up a slant route, and it deflected up into the air, and our safety ended up getting an interception. So we played it well, but we got a very fortunate bounce. The second situation, we had them 3rd down. They were on about the 10, and we had good coverage. And they tried to force a throw into the back onto the pylon over there on the weak side into the boundary, and our boundary quarter made a really good play. It was a tough catch, actually, and he was barely in bounds. And quarterback, we got him off the spot, and he was scrambling and tried to fit it in there, and we happened to be in a decent coverage for what they were trying to do. So we were obviously fortunate there. Usually when you talk about red zone stopping them, you're forcing field goals. So out of a possible 14 points, they didn't get any. And then we had a chance also in the first half. We were down on the 3-yard line and got stopped on 4th and 1. So that was one hiccup that we had in the first half. We felt like we should have 14 points at the half, and I'm sure Slippery Rock was probably feeling the same way. So we were fortunate to go in 7-0. If I had to do it all over again, hindsight's 2020, would have probably kicked the field goal and gone up 10-0. But I just felt like if we could get up 14, that would be a huge advantage for us going into halftime. And Slippery Rock played it well and stopped us, and so we went in at halftime up 7-0.
And you did get a couple scores in the second half, and let's talk about some of the players that really made that happen. And obviously, it's not all about Dwayne Brown. There were a lot of guys that contributed to that, but the old saying says big-time players step up in big-time games, and I think for about the fourth week in a row, Dwayne was just a star on the offensive side of the ball. And there's a long history of great receivers at IUP, but just talk a little bit about his performance and what that does for the overall confidence of the offense when he's out there.
Yeah, he's a receiver, but he's more of a great athlete. He's got unbelievable hands, unbelievable ball skills, can really jump, tremendous body control. A lot of his catches that he makes, they're being contested. I think we said 8 of the 10 catches he made Saturday, he was pretty well covered, to be honest with you. And Max Sexton does a really good job of putting the ball where only Dwayne can get it. And he has frustrated a lot of corners in this league, especially here in the first 4 weeks of the season. And he's very dangerous with the short pass because he was a former running back in high school, and he actually was a running back here as a true freshman. So he's very good with yardage after the catch. When we run him on jet sweeps, he usually makes the first guy miss. So he's dangerous as a runner with the ball also. But he's really had a great 4 weeks. I don't know the whole national scene, but I would say he's probably done as much as a receiver in 4 weeks as much as anybody in the country up to this point.
Yeah, he definitely has. And we've been starting to talk about him in that Harlan Hill conversation, which for us starts week 1. But let me also ask you about one of his counterparts, because you've got a guy on the other side in Hilton Ridley, who I have to think is really helping Dwayne's productivity, because you can't overcommit to Dwayne Brown because Hilton Ridley's been making plays all year as well.
Yes, he's only a sophomore. He's a big guy, big body. Actually, going into the season, Hilton was our third receiver. We lost in the first game of the year a transfer receiver from actually Cal, PA, Derek Lockhart, in the first game of the year with torn ACL, and he's a difference maker also. So Hilton has done a great job going from our number 3 receiver and taking over as our number 2 receiver, and has been very productive. He had 2 or 3 great catches, caught our first touchdown. He's a great blocker because he's got a big body, and he's only a sophomore. So they can't just lean the coverage to Dwayne with Hilton, and also, our running game with, DeJour Stewart. We've had a lot of success running the ball also here early in the season.
Somebody's obviously got to throw the ball to these guys. And I'm curious. I live in Missouri.
Right.
Saw Mac Sexton play last year in person.
Right.
He played for a team in Kansas. He's from Texas. How does he wind up in Indiana?
That's an interesting question. When our season was over, we went, looked in the portal. Our starting quarterback was a senior last year, Harry Woodbury, who had a great year. He was a transfer quarterback, and he was in the portal. And I had known the new Pittsburgh State head coach because he used to coach in Ohio when I coached in Ohio, and when I've been here at IUP, he was at Youngstown State.
Right.
And, so I just called them basically and, said, your guy's in the portal. What can you say? And it was kind of a situation where Mac went there under the previous staff.
Right.
And they had brought in a freshman from Florida that they really liked, and we're going to make him the number 1 quarterback going into this season here. And, they didn't want to lose Mac, but they wanted to be fair to him and allow him the opportunity. And we took our shot, and probably the thing that helped us the most is the success we've had with our last 3 quarterbacks as transfers. Our last 2 have only been here 1 year, and they weren't even here in spring ball. Right. And if you look at their numbers the last 2 years, they're pretty good. And then before that, we had a 4-year guy who transferred as a freshman, Lenny Williams. So our track record obviously was pretty good with transfer quarterbacks. But the tie was Mac's family, and Mac lived they're from Buffalo, New York.
Okay.
And Mac I don't know if Mac lived there more than a year or two. They moved when he was really young, but his father was a trainer for the Buffalo Bills, and was good friends with Jim Kelly. Well, Jim Kelly has been to a lot of our games because two of his nephews, one of our starting linebackers, Connor Kelly, is obviously his nephew, and we had Zach Kelly who played for us for 4 years as a receiver and a special teams player. So Jim's been to a lot of our games. So that was kind of the tie. Mac's father, obviously asked a lot of questions to Jim and Connor, Jim's brother, who's Connor and Zach's father, and liked what he heard. And then they made the visit. And, when you get into that portal, it's interesting because there's got to be an opening. A guy's not going to go somewhere that already has a quarterback. He's just not going to do it. 2 years ago when we got Quentin Maxwell, Northwest Missouri would have got him. His dad played at Northwest Missouri. But they had a starting quarterback there for 3 years. Right. So we ended up getting him from Ohio University.
He's actually from my hometown, so I was very familiar with the family and all that dynamics. So.
Right. So, that would have been a no-brainer. He would have went to Northwest Missouri at a drop of a hat. And it actually helped us get Quentin because his father, they knew about IUP, because we had played Northwest Missouri, and we had a guy on staff as a grad assistant at Ohio University who's from Indiana, PA here, and there was a tie there. So there's got to be an opening. There's got to be a fit. There's got to be some history. And, if there's some familiarity with somebody in the program. And I'll be honest, our last two quarterbacks that were transfers helped us recruit Mac. They just kind of told them, hey, this is how it is. And we're just being honest with you. It's a great place. Once you're here, it's not like you're a transfer. You're just one of the 90. And it's been a good fit for us. Mac's had a good 4 games. He's very comfortable here. Players like him. He's a good leader. And he's done a great job so far up to this point.
Coach, looking at where you guys are through those 4 games, like you mentioned, obviously you guys have a lot of signs that indicate this team's got potential to go far, but probably maybe you haven't played your best game yet. Where do you see your areas of improvement that are out there the most?
Well, I think offensively we've got a lot of pieces. We've got a lot of veteran players, experienced players, good talent, a great offensive line. We feel like we've left a lot of points out there in the first 4 weeks of the season, actually.
Sure.
Like last week, we got stopped on the 3-yard line. So we feel kind of like, hey, there was 7 we could have had. But if we could put it all together and play a full 60 minutes, we've played some great halves offensively. If we could play we'd probably play closer to a full 60 minutes Saturday, even though we only scored 20 points. We had the ball for 35 minutes. We were 9 for 15 on third down. We had an 18-play drive and a 13-play drive, which helped our defense. But we really haven't put a game together scoring-wise for 60 minutes. Defensively, we're getting better. We're still young. We returned 8 starters, but 7 of them were freshmen last year. So, we're starting 7 sophomores now, and they've got a year under their belt. And last year they got better and better as the year ended. And we could see a lot of development and growth the last couple of weeks with our defense. We early in the year, we've had a problem with giving up the big play. We've got to get, that really work on that. And, the turnover ratio, we were -3 going into the Slip Rock game, and we ended up +2 in the game. So when we talked about, the team that's probably going to win the game is the team that takes care of the ball better than the other team. So that came to fruition. So we got to continue to improve on our turnover ratio. We got to stop giving up the big play. Defensively, same thing. We haven't had a full 60 minutes where we've played very well. I mean, we played pretty well in the first half last week because of the 2 turnovers. and didn't give up any points. And in the second half, we had the lead. We probably played it a little close to the vest to not give up the big play because we had the lead the whole game. But, we've got to play better defensively, if we think that we're going to continue and win every Saturday. And, this Saturday we probably have, in my mind, I really feel like Cal probably has the most talent other than Shepherd in the whole conference. I really believe that. Mitchell's a great quarterback. They've got a lot of great defensive players back. Jackson, the receiver, is probably as good as anybody in the country. We've had great games with them every year for the last 10 years. It's a tough place to play down there. So this will probably be our biggest test of the year, to be honest with you, on the road against a really good team that really could be 5-0. They're 3-2, and their 2 losses are on the road to Kutztown and Shepherd. They were beating Kutztown by 10 late in the third quarter, and they were beating Shepherd. Shepherd tied them on a last-second field goal and then beat them in overtime at Shepherd.
Right.
So those are 2 impressive. I mean, you hate to say impressive losses, but they're very impressive losses when you go play those 2 teams on the road and really have a great chance to win the game. So they very easily could be 5-0 and be a top 10 team right now. A play here and a play there. So we know we're in for a tough game. And like I said, they're a really good team. They're very well coached. They play great defense, and their quarterback and they've got a lot of good players on offense, but their quarterback and Jackson at receiver are as good as anybody in the whole region.
Now, Coach, you were kind of in the same situation last year, coming off a big win over the Rock, and then California got you at home, and then you have a bad week the following week against Edinburgh. So I know when you move on to a new season, everything else is in the past. But can you kind of point to that experience to kind of help the guys just make sure that they stay focused on what's ahead?
Absolutely. I mean, there's a very good example of maybe we didn't handle success very well after the Slippery Rock game last year. Now, Cal had something to do with that. They're a good team, but and I think the Cal loss ended up being a 2-loss game because then we didn't play very well the next week against Edinburgh. You can we're a different team, obviously, but we do have a lot of players that played last year, so they experienced it. And we've got great leadership. I think the best thing of our team is we've got 12 seniors that have been here 5 or 6 years that have started and played a lot of games for us here. And they've done a great job with leadership, and we've really done a great job, with the intangibles, doing things the right way, playing the right way. So I really like the team, and I think we've got a chance to be pretty good, but it's always about the next game, no matter who you're playing. That's the one that's the most important.
Coach, last question for you. When you came to IUP in 1995, it was to work for Frank Signetti, a legend of coaching in Pennsylvania. And I couldn't possibly ask you to summarize a man like that in just a few words. But I'd love for you to share with our audience just a few thoughts on what he meant, the impact he had in the Indiana community. And I know it goes well beyond football, what he meant to the community and what he meant to you personally.
Well, I've been in this 37 years, and he's not only, one of the best coaches I've ever been around, but he's the best human being I've ever been around. And, when I came here, he said, well, you'll stay 2 years and go back to Division I. And he said, and I'm fine with that. And that was 27 years ago, because the 10 years I worked for him, I loved it. And then had an opportunity to stay and work for Lou Tepper and then work for Curtis, his son. But, I just learned so many lessons from Frank. He let you coach. He let me run the defense. But I learned a lot from him on, player management and how to handle people. 2 things that I really take from him. One is loyalty. He's as loyal as they come. And the glass was always half full with Frank. We used to joke around when we look for an opener during the, scheduling, we'd say Frank would play the Steelers if they play us. If you go back and look at some of our openers when he was the head coach, you'll know exactly. We played Youngstown State. We've played some heavy hitters in 1AA and Nebraska, Omaha nationally, Catawba nationally, and I'm probably forgetting a few. But Frank was always about playing the best, and he was so confident that we could play with anybody. I think that's why we were what we were when he was here, as the head football coach, and he made IUP what it is today.
Without a doubt.
All right. Well, in Indiana, they call him Coach Paul Tortorella. Thank you very much for joining us here on Inside D2 Football. Appreciate it very much.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Coach.
All right. Great interview. That was a lot of fun.
What a cool story for him to elaborate on how Max Sexton ended up coming to IUP.
It was interesting because I knew a little bit of it, and I happened to graduate from high school at the same place that Quentin Maxwell had, which we addressed before. So it was like I knew he had 3 different quarterbacks, and it was really curious how that's is that going to be a trend that continues, or are they going to find some young guy that will eventually mature through the system? But
yeah,
nonetheless,
it's really cool of him to elaborate on that and kind of take us a little bit behind the scenes.
Sure. All right, let's go ahead and Justin, I'm going to go ahead and pull you back down because our second game that was as intense a rivalry game. Now, this is a new rivalry to Division II, at least when you compare it to IUP and Slippery Rock. It would be a new rivalry in Division II. The Key to the City game. It's played in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and in a battle of unbeatens, Sioux Falls led 21-10 with 10 minutes left and withstood an Augustana comeback to retain the Key to the City, 31-24. Matt, you were there, I know, because I saw you on the highlights.
Yes, exactly. Right out of the gate, Augustana kind of threw a little bit of a curveball. Started Casey Bauman at quarterback, the 6'7" quarterback from Montana State, who had transferred there in the offseason. He had returned from injury. So it was kind of one of those things where immediately everyone kind of had to get ready for that. And, he didn't get treated very nicely by the USF defense. They took him down 2 of the first 4 plays, ended up getting 7 sacks. And he kind of got slammed down a handful of other times and really kind of made it tough for their offense to get going for Augustana. Overall, the Cougars were able to kind of control the action gradually, through their running game, but they did mix in the pass fairly well. And I was pretty impressed by their quarterback, Adam Mullen, sophomore, who we talked about last week. He threw for 259 yards, 2 scores, no picks, and he was only sacked once. And USF was able to operate their offense a lot more like they wanted to than Augustana was. Jared Epperson, the kind of home run hitting running back from Augustana, is apparently going to be out for a few weeks. He sat out with injury, while Thurl Reisdorf for USF, kind of their bell cow back. He had 19 carries for 134 with 2 scores and one kind of backbreaker that he had at the beginning of the 4th quarter where he took it, made a house call from 58 yards away and put them up 31, to 10. And, Augustana did a nice job of kind of mounting a comeback there, but it was kind of just too little too late. And, with that, Sioux Falls now has won 8 of 10 in that rivalry for the Key to the City, while at the same time they're now the only team at 5-0 in the Northern Sun.
So they have to feel like they are. 5 games in, you don't feel like you're in control of anything, but when you are the only undefeated team, at least you control your own destiny a little bit. Some good teams coming up on the schedule, but
right.
Still, I think they're in a really good place, it looks like.
Well, when you take into consideration that Mankato has, even though they're only, 1 loss at this point, they have not looked like the fire-breathing dragon that they have in the past. They've already got Duluth, done on the schedule, and Augustana. So, yeah, I think there's some real good thoughts if you're with the Cougar program. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Reisdorfer he was blowing past everybody, as you mentioned, as you're talking about it. He scored on the highlights. So thanks to Kello TV for that. Augustana, Sioux Falls. Augustana is still in good shape, in my opinion. And the one thing I wanted to ask you about that, with Bauman back, and they didn't, obviously they were able to score. I mentioned how they scored a couple of touchdowns to cut the margin. Was that a product of them figuring things out on offense, or was it a product of John Anderson managing the rest of the game?
I think there's a few things.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there's a few things kind of in play. In the second quarter, Augustana had the ball for a really long drive, and it was kind of the hottest point of the day. And I thought to myself, boy, the USFD line may be getting a little bit tired here because they had been on the field for quite a while. Well, late in the game in the fourth quarter, I think they didn't quite, have that same drive to the quarterback that they did during a window of time there, that they did the whole rest of the game. And so I think that was a little bit of a factor, but at the same time, Bauman, he came on out, made a few plays. Augie had a few guys get behind some folks, and all of a sudden it was a one-score game in a hurry.
Right. I was just curious about that personally. It's in baseball, it's easy to get fooled by September wins by a team that's out of the race, and same thing happens in football. So let's go ahead and move to our third game, and another rivalry game. What a great week! Saginaw Valley struck first, but it was all Grand Valley after that, as the Lakers won convincingly in the Battle of the Valleys, 29-7. Now, I told you earlier that I knew that Matt was at the game because I saw him in the highlight.
Or Tony.
Okay. No. I'm going there. I know Tony was at the game because I listened to the broadcast with him on it and enjoyed it.
I was just going to say, he was on it, yeah.
Yeah, you did a great job, Tony. So you were there. What did you come away with? What impressions did you come away with from the game?
Well, first off, thank you for the kind words, Brandon. It was a lot of fun, and it usually is, and I'm very lucky to get a chance to be able to do that every so often. Game was interesting because you called it exactly right. Saginaw Valley was able to score on their very first possession. They held Grand Valley to a 3-and-out, and they took the punt and went right down the field, 70 yards, and I think only 6 plays. Didn't take them long, and they were up 7-0, and Saginaw Valley did not make the red zone again after that drive. Grand Valley made some adjustments on defense, kind of figured out what they needed to do to make sure that they were getting their fits and in the run game, and then doing a lot of rallying and containment on the passing game. And I think when you play a team like Saginaw Valley that wants to run the ball as much as they do, and they have a quarterback who, while he's a D1 caliber athlete and spent several years at I think he was at UMass for a couple of years and then Central Florida before coming to Saginaw Valley, just didn't have the arm or the size to really push the ball deep. And so Grand Valley, I think, knew once they were able to get a lead and force Saginaw Valley into kind of not doing what they really want to do or what they're comfortable with offensively, that it would play into their hands. And that's pretty much what we saw, both in terms of the way Grand Valley defended Saginaw, but then additionally from the offensive side, I think as the game wore on, Grand Valley kind of figured out how to solve the riddle of how to run the ball against the Cardinals. You saw a lot more stuff in the middle of the line versus the jet sweeps and sideline or the drawn out zone. I can't
zone read
right now. Zone read and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, the deep zone, the stretch zone, and all that kind of stuff. It was much more geared towards the middle of the line, and they started to rip off 4, 5, 6 yards at a pop. And the funny thing was they didn't really rip a lot of long runs in this game. It was a very much a cumulative, continual pounding through the middle. And it was getting those 5 to 6 yards almost every time. And so that's not only physically demanding on a defense, but it's pretty demoralizing too when you just kind of know over the stretch of the game that you just can't stop them even though you want to.
Right, so you've seen Saginaw Valley in person now. You've seen Grand Valley in person now. I know that you're not somebody who just says things to say things or to get clicks or to whatever. But is it clear in the GLEAK that there's a difference between Grand Valley, Ferris State, and everybody else now?
I think you could say that. I will say that Saginaw Valley's defense is pretty close to being as advertised. What they did to shut down, Grand Valley likes to get chunk plays in the pass game. And even though they did it, they had the 58-yard touchdown from Cade Peterson to Jacob Miller. That was really more of a blown coverage than anything else. And that didn't happen a lot. There were a lot of plays where Cade was flushed out of the pocket, was trying to keep plays alive, and either had to pull it down and run or throw the ball away. The job that the Saginaw Valley secondary was doing downfield and coverage was really, really good. And at different times they were causing some difficulty for Grand Valley in the run game. Like I said, it really took until that third and fourth quarter, maybe even just the latter part of the second, when you really start to see Grand Valley kind of figuring the riddle out, so to speak. So Saginaw Valley can defend some people. I think Grand Valley may have shown that, the downfield passing game for Saginaw Valley, that lack of a threat or that lack of balance is maybe a little bit of an Achilles heel, but they're still going to win a lot of ball games and still going to cause people fits. But are they at that level where I think they can beat Ferris State this week? They got a tall order in front of them, would be what my assertion is going as we sit here on Sunday night. Yeah.
Okay. Hey, Davenport is 4-0, so don't overlook the Panthers.
Well, the Panthers finally figured out what they want to do at quarterback, and that's a local Grand Rapids kid in Jason Whitaker, who was, I believe, an All-Stater at Rockford here on the north side of Grand Rapids. And
I believe I read that he was
Northwestern, so he's a D1 kid.
I believe I read that he was a 4-star prospect coming out of high school.
He was, and he went to Northwestern, played for Pat Fitzgerald, and he was. I know he saw some game action in his first couple of years. Not really sure where he fit into the roster scenario his last couple of years or during the COVID year. So he's a grad transfer. He's only got the 1 year, I believe. And it took Sparky McEwen a couple of games to figure out what he wanted to do offensively. And once he put Whitaker in, it's been lights out. I mean, he was 360 and 5 touchdowns last week, and 361 and 5 touchdowns again this week. So definitely they're moving the ball in the pass game a lot more effectively than what we're used to seeing out of Davenport.
Yeah, he's been impressive. I will be curious to see how that materializes the rest of the year. I think he's like 12-1 TD to INT ratio so far, and he's really only started the last 2 games. So.
Only started the last 2. Yeah, he was splitting time in the first 2 games that they managed to win. And yeah, I mean, he's been pretty lights out these last couple of weeks. In that game yesterday, Davenport was down 17 points twice in the first half. And in fact, with a few minutes to go in the first quarter, it was 17-0 Tech, and Davenport had only run 3 offensive plays. So for them to kind of figure things out and put up 52 points in just over 3 quarters, I mean, they're moving the ball. And it's not just Whitaker. He's got a couple of big-bodied receivers on the outside that can do some things. So they're a little bit more of a handful than I think maybe what teams have seen out of Davenport the first few years that they've been in the GLEAK.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, Tony's got everything figured out in the GLEAK. Nobody has.
I don't know about that.
Nobody has anything figured out in the Gulf South. Obviously, my pick of Valdosta State winning the national championship not looking as good. Looks about as good as my pick'em this week, but. Looking at the Gulf South, and we're going to start with one game and then focus on a couple other ones. This one was all Delta State. The Statesmen led 42-17 at the half and cruised to a 70-31 win over the Blazers. Delta State is alone on the top of the conference standings and is the only undefeated team in the Gulf South Conference. Justin, just like I said, this one was all Delta State.
Yeah, it was. And there's several different directions you can go with this one. But I think the thing that really stands out the most and watching the game was just the offensive production that Delta State was able to come away with. They had 703 yards of offense in the game. Patrick Shegog was 26 for 29 for 346, rushed the ball 9 times for 65 yards and 3 touchdowns. Just an offensive performance. Delta State's offense was 11 for 14 on third down conversions, and they scored on 10 of their 12 possessions. The 2 possessions they didn't score on were the end of the first half and at the end of the game. So offensively, it was a show on last night for Delta State, right. And it's just really, really impressive what they were able to do against a conference team, against a Gulf South defense. Their defense is, and I don't want to overshadow their defense. Malik Jones led defense with 6 tackles, 2 pass breakups, and they forced Valdosta State rather 4 of 11 on third down. So, and they made Ivory Durham uncomfortable throwing the football. You know, that the Valdosta State offense is pretty good with Ivory Durham, Seth McGill, Jamar Tompkins, and the list goes on and on. And I felt like at times Ivory Durham was just uncomfortable throwing the football. Didn't give the receivers good balls and just seemed out of sync all night, Valdosta State. So
I want to ask you something. My attention is very divided on a Saturday. I can't focus on any one game. But there's something that I thought, and when you're talking about Ivory Durham being uncomfortable, you saw a lot of Valdosta games last year. You're seeing that you saw this game at least this year. Does it seem like they're keeping him in the pocket more than they used to? Okay.
Yeah, I would say so. I think so. It's hard to say. You don't know what they're talking about in their meeting rooms, what they're telling him, what they want him to do. It's hard to say, but I felt like last year he had the autonomy to pull the football down and run it, and he'd pop off some big runs a lot of times because the defenses had no choice but to sit back and try to take away the passing game. This year, I don't feel like it is. I feel like he's staying in the pocket. You watch him throw the football on the run, and it's just not clean balls downfield. You know, he's missing receivers behind them, low, high. It's just not typical Ivory Durham and what you saw last year when he pulled the football down and would go on 20, 30-yard runs.
Right. All right. Well, let's go ahead and pull up the top 25 results from this week. And we're going to keep you here, Justin, bring everybody else back on. But I want to talk about a couple other Gulf South teams too. Let me pull everybody back up. All right. So you look at the results from the top 25. West Georgia, number 6, loses against Mississippi College, and I would never predict it. I mean, obviously, I'm no prediction expert based upon this week's pick'em, which we'll get to, but that's a shocking score to me, and that was a home game for West Georgia.
Yeah, and they had to Choctaws had to come from behind to do that too. It's not like they were kind of just there all day or had the lead. They were behind for large chunks of that game, and scored with I think it was about 4 seconds left on the clock, and then they had the decision to make. The PAT would have tied it. They opted to go for 2, ran the ball right up the middle, got the 2-pointer, got the lead, and a few minutes later won the game. So yeah, I mean, who saw that coming?
Right. I had the. Oh, go ahead, Devin. Sorry.
Well, I think Mississippi College is a, I don't want to call it a trap game, but I think it's a difficult game with their triple option attack. Not very many schools run that. And so defensively it becomes you see it once a week, or typically once 1 week of the season. So it's hard to stop that type of offense with consistency. And they were able to pop a couple deep runs, it looked like, Chuck, and just kept themselves in the game. And when a team like that stays in the game in the fourth quarter, they start believing they have a chance to knock off West Georgia. And that's kind of what it looked like is what happened.
I agree. And I think that they can be a trap game. And I'll actually give you another one out of the GSC. North Greenville is a team that on any given day can punch above its weight. And we almost saw that with West Florida. So, going back to Delta State and looking at the GSC overall, Delta State has gotten through West Florida and Valdosta State. You think, it's all downhill from there. I'll be honest, I will be surprised if Delta State makes it through the rest of the GSC undefeated. Just the way that conference is and the way it's going, I would not be surprised if somebody that we don't think could beat them ends up beating them. That's just the way it is in the GSC right now.
I would agree.
Well, and I think too, I know the Mississippi College West Georgia game, West Georgia threw an interception down in the red zone, in the end zone, in fact, going in to score, and then North Greenville threw the interception that led to the winning score for West Florida. So turnovers were kind of the name of the game in the Gulf South Conference yesterday.
Yep.
Yeah, with the last second field goal, West Florida took to beat North Greenville. I mean, North Greenville hadn't looked strong this year, or at least not that I recall off the top of my head.
No, they're a team that can punch above their weight when they want to, and when it all comes together. But another result we didn't see coming.
Okay.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised. I mean, North Greenville got up. I mean, they were up 23-10 in that game, and all of a sudden, West Florida comes flying back, and just it's one of those things where we're not quite sure who West Florida is right now either. I mean, they're not the prolific passing game necessarily that they've been of recent years, and they're running the ball a lot more. So, I mean, they were able to get the field goal at the gun, but it's one of those things where I'm not sure if we're looking at them in a more favorable light after that game. I mean, they won, but that's kind of a quagmire, I think.
Yep. So I think we lost Brand there
No,
for a second.
no, we're good. We're good.
Oh,
Let's move
all
on
right.
to let's move on to talk about a game in the South Atlantic Conference. Carson Newman, a surprising win. I haven't been as bullish. Is that when you think something's great on Newberry as everybody else? But I did not expect Carson Newman to be the team that would knock off Newberry. A 24-14 win for the Eagles. One they badly needed, Chuck.
Yeah, they really did. Carson Newman, again, we kind of talked at the top of the show and even before the show, some of us were talking about, history and some of the teams that have a lot of history. Carson Newman has such a winning tradition, and the last 2 to 3 years have just been really, really tough for that program. They really needed something like this. They're changing up the offense. They're doing a few things a little bit differently. 1-10 last year was just not at all what you expect from that program. They really needed something like this. So can they use this to springboard into a winning season? Maybe surprise a few more people. I don't know, but they really needed something like this to prove that they still have it in them. And I would agree with you. I mean, I love the program at Newberry, but once or twice a year you're going to get a game where they just don't pull it all together. And they had a 14-point lead in this game, and it just fell apart after that. So. Great win for Carson Newman and for Coach Clowney. They had to have this one.
Okay, another top 25 result. Emporia State, 42-35 win over number 24 Washburn.
Yeah, this game was not as close as the score indicated. It was 42-14 at the beginning of the fourth quarter. There, Emporia State was up big. Washburn, they'll put together 3 scoring drives, make it closer. Had an onside kick attempt to try to get the ball back, like a minute and a half left. But that first 3 quarters, it was all Emporia State, and Kate Ferg's favorite quarterback in D2, Brandon Gleason, just had a great game there for him. He's so fun to watch. He's very accurate there for Emporia State, and I think they're a team that could play spoiler later this year. They have 2 losses right now, which puts them right in the bubble for Super Region 3 if they want to get into the playoffs there, but they still have to play Kearney and Northwest still, so they could be a team that matches up well with those teams with the way they throw the ball. Could give those teams issues, so keep an eye on Emporia State later this year. They're playing some really good football. They nearly knocked off Pitt State last week as well. If they wouldn't have, they lost 14-13 to Pitt State the week before and missed, I think, 1 or 2 field goals and an extra point. So they were right there in that game to knock off Pitt State, who's a top 10 team in D2 right now. So fantastic win for Emporia State. Washburn, give them credit for not going away quietly in that rivalry game. Just too many mistakes early on for them to capitalize on that game.
Devin, do you think that a team like Emporia can hang around and still be in potentially the playoff race? Or, they seem like they've got a really potent offense.
Yeah, they have a very potent offense, and their defense is playing. I know they gave up 35 points, but again, a lot of that was late in that game when they were playing some prevent. But they're a team, as I said, Kearney, their weakness on defense would be their secondary, and same thing for Northwest. If you can put some points on the board, if you can score 20 points versus Northwest defense, you have a good chance of winning that game because right now their offense is just not good. So there's a chance for them at 3-2 right now to run the table possibly. The MIAA is tough because each week is kind of a different battle within a battle kind of deal because I'm not sure if anybody's really head and shoulders above anybody else in the conference. So they're going to kind of cannibalize each other. But Emporia State's definitely a dangerous team to watch going forward.
Right. Other games of interest. Winona State, a 38-14 win over Wayne State. What does that mean for the Northern Sun, Matt?
Well, you take a look at Wayne State of Nebraska. They were undefeated coming into this game, and their quarterback is, John Bone's been playing great football. But all of a sudden, in the second half, a bunch of things started happening. You get two scores off of special teams for Winona. Winona seemed to kind of not allow Bone to go ahead and do a lot of that zone read running in the second half, and they weren't able to go ahead and get the ball over the top like they have been either. So real big win for Winona. Both teams are now 4-1, and it creates a bit of a logjam of a bunch of 4-1 teams in the South Division of the Northern Sun.
Right. Black Hill State, another rivalry game. A 24-17 win over South Dakota Mines.
The 137th Black Hills Brawl. That's pretty impressive. I think I read it's the 4th most played rivalry in Division II, in college football. So
Right.
pretty awesome.
That's really
Black
cool.
Hills State wins the game. They go to 5-0. And friend of ours, at least some of us, a fellow who goes by the handle of CFB Campus Store. He goes to tons in college football games. He usually hits about 4 or 5 every weekend. He was actually at this game last night, and he could not have spoken more positively about the experience. It's such a unique environment. That's actually his photo. Drive-in football in South Dakota. Just a really unique venue, a really unique game. And yeah, he said it was an awesome experience. And with that win, Black Hills goes to 5-0.
You know, Chuck, having watched that game last night, kind of a wild game. I mean, it's one of those things where South Dakota Mines kept hurting themselves with turnovers. I mean, they outgained, Black Hills by 200 yards in that football game, but just they weren't able to convert that into points. And Josh Bresky, newer coach yet for Black Hills, now he's got a squad to 5-0, and I wasn't sure if I was seeing them at 5-0 at the beginning of the year, and here they are.
Yeah, Mines had a lot of trouble extending drives. I think they were only like 8 of 21 on third down. So great third down defense from the Jackets.
Okay. And last game of interest, another game I got wrong in the pick'em. Benedict, 45. Fort Valley State, 13. Chris, somehow this is your fault.
You didn't pay the fee. You didn't pay the fee.
Sensing a trend.
Yeah, pay the fee. That's Benedict's one of their hashtags on Twitter. And the beautiful thing about this game was, if you're a Benedict fan, you got to spoil somebody's homecoming in a really big way. It was, Benedict scored on their first 2 drives. Part of that was because Fort Valley shanked a punt and allowed Benedict to start a drive on the wrong side of the field for Fort Valley. So, Benedict normally passes the ball a little bit more than running, but they just ran all over the Wildcats. And they ran behind their offensive line, whose nickname I think is pretty cool. It's called the Fist. They ran behind the Fist, and the Fist punched Fort Valley in the mouth. So Benedict moves to 5-0 in the top of the East Division now. And then if you're waiting to see when they're going to play Albany, it's going to be the last game of the season at this point. It's the last game of the regular season. So there's more to come there, but certainly a team that is on the rise.
All right, let's go ahead and skip the results of last week's pick'em and move on to this. I'm totally kidding. I got Delta right. Go Statesman. Fighting Okra. Thank you. Who did the best?
Oof.
Chuck. Very good.
Good job, Chuck.
Yeah.
Good job, Chuck. Thank you.
Yeah, but big whiff.
Not Matt.
Big whiff on the game Ferg just talked about. That surprised me, but otherwise a good week.
Well, nonetheless, that we cannot get that off there quick enough, and that's all that we need to focus on that one. So it's not. Witt can't even put on the Bears hat, and we can't even make fun of him about it. That's how much.
I'm a little bit disappointed with the Bear hat, and then there was a Bear loss today with some really poor effort. So the Bear hat's sitting out a week.
Okay, very good.
Packers won though.
It's on the IL. Let's look at this week's undercard, guys. Ferris State is at Saginaw Valley. Again, that's going to be a good game, but Matt, you think everybody would pick Ferris State? And I tend to agree with you on this.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I thought Saginaw had a chance of kind of winning one of these 2 games, whether it was going to be Grand Valley or Ferris State. Their effort in this last one does not give me a lot of hope that they're going to be able to get that running game going and everything against Ferris State.
All right, Limestone is at LR. Justin, Chuck, you guys are the people that understand the SAC the best. It's really cool to be able to mention Lenore Rhyme in a meaningful game at this point of the year.
I don't know that this game, when the schedule came out, had as much excitement as it does this week. I'm actually calling this game on Saturday, so I'm looking forward to it. I think it should be a good game. Limestone surprised some people offensively; they're putting up some pretty good numbers, and Lenore Ryan, minus the blemish to Ferris State, is doing what they're expected to do. So it should be a really good game. I'm looking forward to it.
Limestone until 2 weeks ago had never won more than 2 games consecutively. Now their program only dates back to 2014. They'd never had more than a 2-game winning streak. They have now won 4 in a row. So this is a big deal for them to be in this position where this is all of a sudden a relevant game within the conference, within the region, and even nationally. Because this could be the type of game, if they win this one, that really gets some attention on their program. So I haven't broken this one down completely yet, but I think this could be a pick 'em because I could make a case either way in that game.
Okay, next game to look at: Bowie State at Virginia State. Bowie State 3-2, Virginia State 4-1. What are your thoughts on this one, Ferg?
Well, this one also probably could have been a really good pick'em game because it's kind of hard to really tell who could take this game. Last year was a game that Bowie State was flying high and Virginia State was struggling, and they almost came back to win that game. It was high scoring, like 51-44 or something like that, and it's got a lot of drama behind it because Bowie State's former head coach Henry Frazier III is now at Virginia State, and so is another quarterback that played for Bowie State as Virginia State's offensive coordinator, and it's homecoming. So there's a lot at stake in this game, I think, as both teams are trying to keep up with Virginia Union, who's still undefeated. I expect lots of yards. Virginia State on the ground, Bowie State through the air. And by the way, I just want to throw something out there. Last week, Bowie State against Livingstone for Bowie State's homecoming, the quarterback, DJ Golat, actually bested Amir Hall's single game passing record for Bowie State, passed for 439 yards.
How many touchdowns, Chris? Do you know?
I had to go back and look it up, but it was multiple.
Okay.
I think it was like 4 touchdowns.
Okay, curious. All right, good for him. He's played well. They lost too much. Bowie did. This is
too many turnovers. That's the story of this year for them. It's too many turnovers. They happen against Saginaw Valley, and it's just Shaw as well. It's too many turnovers.
All right, let's go ahead and Notre Dame and Frostburg State 4-1 versus 3-2. I could have seen this being 5-0 versus 5-0 at this point or whatever, but Frostburg. With the coaching change, maybe not doing as well as we thought they would, but still a meaningful game in the MEC.
Yeah, Frostburg's kind of a tough spot here. I expected this to possibly be a battle of unbeatens as well. But Frostburg lost their starting quarterback a couple games ago, and they've lost both games played since then. Tough one at Concord. And then this past week, they were involved in one of the games that had to be rescheduled from Saturday to Thursday. So on very short notice, you basically get in one practice and then have to bus all the way down to North Carolina to play that game. That was a really tough assignment for them. So they've lost 2 in a row. They obviously can really get their season back on track if they win this game, but I think you have to look at Notre Dame as a favorite in that one.
Right,
Stay frosty.
And UIndy at McKendree. UIndy 4-0, not that surprising. Matt even talked about before the season started how with the departure of Lindenwood that UIndy would probably reclaim the dominance in that league. McKendree 4-1, a good season for them. That's a really good GLVC game.
Yeah, it is. McKendree actually is second in the nation in passing yards, and UIndy obviously has got the running attack going and everything else. It's not going to be an easy road contest. We all would probably take UIndy in that one, but I think that's a good matchup there in the conference.
Well, McKendree's loss is Delta State in a game that was considerably more competitive than the game Delta State played last Saturday. So,
no doubt about it.
Good squad.
I think it's interesting how they finally got Turner Pullen really going at quarterback. McKendree historically is a pass-heavy team, and they kind of fell down a little bit. Now they're back up with the right person at the helm.
Yeah.
Very good.
This will be a real test to see how far they've progressed too. Because don't forget, I mean, one of the wins that they have was an overtime win up at Northern Michigan to open the season, and Northern's moved the ball pretty well in spots this year, and have struggled at other times too. So, you know, I mean, it's a win, but it's not. That would be somebody that if they're really moving the ball the way that we're talking about here, that probably shouldn't have been that close of a game. Yeah, it was an opener. Yeah, it was a long roadie, but still. You know, Northern's 3-2, but this still has some holes to it.
All right. And we're going to thank some people again. And when we come back, we'll look at our pick'em for this week. Just wanted to take this opportunity to thank those who have supported D2 Football this year. D2 Football is free, but it isn't cheap. Your support helps offset our expenses and allows us to expand our coverage. If you like what we're doing, please consider supporting us. Visit d2football.com/support. Or if you want to do it the old-fashioned way, click contact on the website to find our mailing address. But again, thank you for supporting D2 Football.
Brandon, we spoke quite a bit last week about the Augustana and USF Key to the City game, and we said that's probably a top 5 national rivalry game and kind of what it's become and all the fervor with it. That said, we've got a huge game up on the docket here. Northwest Missouri State traveling to Pitt State, 4-1 at an unbeaten 5-0 Pitt State team.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, you've been around this rivalry for a good long time, having been a Northwest State grad. Why don't you give us a little bit of a flavor of some of that for those who don't know as much about it?
Well, I often talk about history a lot because when you get older, history means stuff to you. And
you lived it.
I did live this one. I mean, I did live most of this one. The MIAA was 0-2. Everybody considered, especially Kenneth Massey, considers the MIAA to be equivalent to the SEC, apparently. But the MIAA is a really good Division II conference now. Okay, every year it's one of the top 5, we'll say. Mm-hmm. Before Pitt State arrived, the MIAA was 0-2 in the playoffs. Hadn't won a playoff game. Pitt State arrived, they won immediately, and in 1989, they reclassified from the NAIA to Division II. They were supposed to get spanked by Truman State, and the Gorillas punched the Bulldogs in the mouth and the first time they met, and gained immediate recognition and respect. In 1991, the MIAA not only had a representative in the playoffs, it had a national championship, and then in 1992, Pitt State was the runner-up that year. The Gorillas made the playoffs from 89 to 97, didn't miss. Then they made them again from 99 to 2001, again from 2003 to 2005, and have made it in 8, 11, and 14. They won the national championship in 91, then they won it again in 2011. And quite frankly, if Pitt State did not enter Division II and did not enter the MIAA, none of the MIAA teams would have raised their game like they have. And they would be a mediocre at best conference in Division II. But Pitt State forced them to get better. And one of the teams that got better was Northwest Missouri. And, you can only handle Ronald Moore running for 300 on you so many times before you decide, like, hey, we better start trying as well. And Mel Churchman showed up, invented football. That's an inside joke for anybody on our D2 message board. But he showed up and invented football. And then in 1996, the Bearcats made the playoffs and became the first non-Pitt State team to win a playoff game. They made the playoffs from 96 to 2000, won a championship in 98 and 99 in that period. They made the playoffs again in 2002. And then from 2004 to 2021, Northwest Missouri State has not missed the playoffs. So they won championships in 9, 13, 15, and 16, and lost 4 in a row from 2005 to 2008 to honestly, two of those were very impressive Grand Valley teams. But there have been some amazing games between the two teams. Truman State thought they were going to punch Pitt State in the mouth when they first entered Division II, and Northwest Missouri thought that they would punch Pitt State in the mouth in 1996 whenever Northwest had this first really good season. Mm-hmm. And Pitt State showed up in Maryville and they played the football. They only needed half the stadium because it was controlled by Pitt the whole time. Gorillas won 40-0. 97, Northwest went to Pitt and won 15-14 on a botched extra point that they had to run in for the win. So it could have been 14-14, but they had to run in for 2. Several tremendous games after that. Comeback wins, close games, games that Northwest won that they shouldn't have, games that Pitt State absolutely dominated. In 2004 and 5, they played once in the regular season and one in the postseason, and they did that in 2008 as well. One of the memorable games for me was a 2007 game. I think was the year when Xavier Oman jumped over the line to score on the last play of the game. It was like Churchman rolled the dice, and it was like, we're going to win it or lose it right here. I think in any case, it's been a tremendous rivalry. MIAA's the bet at its best when we was at 2004. They played in the last game of the regular season, ranked 1 and 2 in the country. And every year, I hope the Gorillas are good. And this year, it looks like those hopes are going to come true. So it's a fantastic rivalry. I think the strength of the teams has flipped this year. And, here's to hoping Northwest can keep its end of the deal this year, because the Gorillas have looked really good.
Hey, Brandon, I want to ask you a question. So, I hate neutral site games. I think college football games need to be played on campus. But for several years, this rivalry was played at Arrowhead Stadium in Kansas City. And there were some really big crowds for those events. Can you talk a little bit about what the atmosphere was like for some of those games?
I think the biggest complaint that people have about it was that even when you get 25,000 people in a 75,000 seat stadium or 70,000 seat stadium, whatever it is, it doesn't seem big. But as somebody who was on the field for all these games, it was so fun because the crowds were generally balanced, that no matter what would happen, there was going to be a roar on one side or the other. And it was going to be bigger than most attended games that day. So even if you split them up, you had 10,000 over here, cheering, and then 10,000 over there cheering. And it seemed like every play was a big play. I loved it. I wish it still existed. Whenever Northwest has played there a couple of times without Pittsburgh State, and it's not the same. It's just not the same. It takes, both of those teams to make that game special at all in that stadium. Yeah. And the atmospheres have been pretty good. And like I said, I wish it existed, but it does not. But I had zero issue with that game, Chuck, being played in Kansas City at a neutral site.
And I'll piggyback off that. Like when I was growing up, was the kind of the heyday of the Fall Classic there at Arrowhead between Northwest and Pitt State. Like I said, the 07 game, I was 12 years old at that time, kind of deal, going to that game, and just the atmosphere of Pitt State fans on one side, Northwest fans on the other, and just kind of doing the cheers back and forth, which is a really cool atmosphere. And I've been in the games now that back on site, kind of deal in Maryville or Pittsburgh, and they're still really fun games because those crowds are always pretty good either way. But there was something special about the Fall Classic. And as Brandon said, I saw Northwest play Central Missouri the Fall Classic, and I broadcasted one of those games actually. And it was a fun game to broadcast, but definitely didn't have the same feel as the Pitt State games. And as Brandon said, the MIAA is just better whenever Northwest and Pitt State are battling for the top of the conference. So I'm really happy that Pitt State's playing well this year with that. And it should be a really fun game down there. I love Carney Smith Stadium down there in Pittsburgh. I plan on being down there Saturday, so it should be a really fun atmosphere down there for two teams that Northwest is kind of back against the wall still, though, that one loss, and things aren't quite clicking for them compared to Pitt State. So it should be a lot of fun, though. I love this rivalry. It's the more important rivalry for Northwest. I know Missouri Western is closer, but Pitt State actually beats them, so it's actually a rivalry on their kind of deal. So this should be a lot of fun this weekend.
Well, just to put a little different spin on what Devin just said, there are proximity rivalries, and then there are real rivalries.
Yep, that's fair.
I think Saginaw Valley and Grand Valley became a rivalry out of two good programs in the early 2000s. Right, that's what made that a rivalry. Ferris. Now, I still think Ferris and Grand Valley are the biggest rivalry in the GLEAK, but it's also a proximity rivalry where it did matter when Ferris wasn't very good at all in the early 2000s, but it wasn't the same right then as the Saginaw Valley. So there are two different kinds of rivalries. The best kind of rivalry is like Sioux Falls and Augie, Henderson State and Ouachita, where it's both a proximity and a success rivalry. But Pitt State and Northwest have done things that nobody else in the MIAA have even dreamed about. So that's why that rivalry exists, and that's why it's special.
Yep. Got them up on the shelf here, squaring off against each other. So
Yeah, absolutely, should be fun. I was just reading the comments in the chat there, and someone mentioned the 07 Northwest getting to host Grand Valley, so they going to Allendale. So I want to mention that. When you said Oman, that really triggered some Grand Valley fans in the chat, so that made me laugh.
98 yards later, it's still triggering him. So, all right, let's go ahead and work on the pick'em. Let me pull that up, guys. There we go. This week we're going to pick Northwest Missouri at Pitt State, West Alabama at Valdosta, Minnesota State at Wayne State, West Florida at West Georgia, and IUP at California. These are very interesting. We're just going to take them in order. We'll go with the Northwest Pitt game first. I will pick first, and I will pick Pitt.
What?
What?
Who is next? Chuck, you're next.
He just passes it on like it's nothing.
Right.
All right. Hold on. Let me pull it back down and listen. I'm going to pick the team that I think is going to win.
This is like reverse psychology or something you're doing. I understand.
I'm not
We're on
smart
top.
enough
We're on top of this.
I'm not smart enough to engage in reverse psychology. I think Pitt's going to
Yes,
win.
you
I
are.
think they've been more consistent.
Burn his degree.
I'm going last, by the way.
It'd be worth the same amount burned or unburned. Anyway, but yeah, I think I'm going to pick Pitt. So it's a Carney Smith as well. And Northwest has not been very consistent on offense.
Get him in the comments, folks. Get him in the comments.
I don't care. And the offense has been inconsistent, and they're incredibly beat up. Hohensee didn't play, the quarterback for Northwest yesterday. Braden Wright did play, and it was an absolute miracle that he did because nobody knows how beat up the kid was. It was very impressive, actually. So I picked Pitt State. All right,
Okay.
Chuck, your turn.
I am also going to go with Pitt State.
Okay. All right, Devin Albertson. Devin, you can
I'm
go
going-
last. Hold on.
I'm going
Justin.
last.
Justin.
I'm going to take Pitt State.
Okay. Chris.
Well, if you don't believe in Northwest, I don't either. I'm going with Pitt State.
Okay. And
Think for yourself, Chris.
Whit.
I was not expecting all of this. I'm about to go get the hat in a minute. We're not-
Otherwise
we're
known as the
That's a
McMahon.
good way
Do
to
it.
draw it out.
We're now putting all the pressure on the Gorillas. This is awkward. Northwest going to love this. I like what Pitt State's done so far. I'm not sure I like what I see right now with the Bearcats. I'm taking Pitt State.
Okay. And Devin. Well,
Devin's
before
not
Devin
us
picks,
down.
Tony, you want to talk about this game at all?
No, I'm surprised, not surprised. You know, I've had a lot of conversations over the years, and so
Yeah.
similarly, you're just being honest, and I got a hard time disagreeing with you. I'm with you. Hohensee didn't play last week. You're not sure what you're going to get out of him and the offense if he does come back for this one. And Pitt State's got it running right now, so I think it's hard to pick against the Gorillas.
Right, Devin?
So, I love the Northwest defense, but if they're on the field as much as they were in that first half versus Missouri Western against Pitt State, it won't be close because Pitt State can throw the ball a little bit there. I love Pitt State's quarterback and Dodson Jr. The kid's a gamer. I'm still not thrilled with the Pitt State offensive line when it comes to pass blocking. I think that's a bit of a weakness for them. You don't want that weakness playing Northwest, but I think they'll have plenty of opportunities to right that problem. You get that plenty of drives because Northwest offense. And it's not just they're hurt and that the quarterbacks aren't playing great at this point because they're dealing with injuries. It's that the coaches know that, so the play calling is very conservative, and they just can't get out of their own way to try to move the ball down the field. They only had 45 yards of offense against Missouri Western in the first half. So I don't think they get the 20 points. I think Pitt State does. So give me Pitt State.
That sounded like a letter of apology to the Northwest people.
It did. You know, Devin is clearly.
I'm giving reasons.
I'm pulling this down to insult you, Devin. Because clearly,
Do it.
you're a
Bring it.
rookie.
So sorry. I'm so sorry, everyone. I'm going to do this.
No, I had to go on like ESPN previously to be the host for the selection show when they used to do it, and be honest about things on there too. So I've had to do this all kinds of times. I've developed thick skin to pissing off Northwest people. That's not even a problem anymore. All right.
Well, Northwest fans, you want a little bit of a silver lining. I picked Pitt State a couple years ago at the Fall Classic, and Northwest ran away with it. So maybe I'll be wrong again, but I don't think so. I think Pitt State wins better this year.
Don't plan on that. All right.
Pitt State's better this year. They just are.
Okay, let's go to West Alabama at Valdosta State. Chuck, you're going to go first.
Well, obviously don't have much confidence in Valdosta State's defense, but I don't have a lot of confidence in West Alabama's offense either. I think they've been a little underwhelming, and I will go with Valdosta State.
Okay. Devin.
Give me West Alabama. I'm just not in on Valdosta right now.
Okay. Justin.
This one,
It's a great pick 'em, isn't it? That's
I'll tell you what, it's tough. And I didn't think I'd say this, but give me West Alabama in this one. I think Valdosta, they've got to figure some things out. And I think this is a big week for them. This is a big week for Valdosta.
Sorry to interrupt, Justin. I'm sorry. I'm still not on my game this week. So, K. Ferg, who you got, bud?
Valdosta State. Go Tremaine.
All right. Whit.
Yeah. Ooh. Valdosta. I mean, just that last game. I mean, it was like they had some melatonin in their water or something. They were. I mean, never got out of the gate in that one defensively. I do agree with Chuck's take here, though. I think West Alabama has not been prolific offensively like other teams Valdosta has and will see. So I'm going to take Valdosta here to be enough offensively and to figure out something defensively to win this game.
All right. I will do the same. I'm going to pick the Blazers.
I know we're not on camera here, but I've got a guest picker, and she likes Tigers.
Tony, what is your thought?
I'm kind of with Devin in that Valdosta. It's just so hard to have any faith in him right now. But I've seen Patrick Shegog firsthand, so to see how much he's developed and what he's turned into for Delta State, I mean. Yeah, 70 points is a lot, but he's the type of talent that's going to do that to, I think, more people than maybe they think are expecting it. But with all that said, I just feel like Valdosta's got way too much on the line here, and West Alabama being so shaky at different points of the season offensively. I think it's a lesser of two evils pick for me in taking the Blazers.
Okay, let's move on to Minnesota State versus Wayne State. The Wildcats. Devin.
I'm going to go with Minnesota State.
Okay. Justin.
Minnesota State.
K. Ferg.
I'm going with Mankato as well.
Okay. Whit, I'll come back to you. I'm going to pick Wayne State College. Chuck Bittner.
Yeah, Mankato's been a little underwhelming, but I think that they win this game at Wayne State. I think last week's loss to Winona was kind of exposed Wayne State a little bit.
Okay, and now back to you, Whit.
I think Mankato has got a nice ceiling that they frankly haven't gotten that close to this year. They haven't been able to put things together offensively like I was thinking they would. Wayne State has played better football, frankly. For the first month or so of the season. I'm going to take Wayne State in this one.
Okay. All right. And next up, West Georgia is hosting West Florida. And Justin can go first.
This is a tough one. Coaches I talk to in the Gulf South right now say West Florida has a lot of talent, and they wouldn't be surprised if they win a national championship. I think they've been up and down. I think this week surprised me a little bit. And when you look at West Georgia, it's somebody I've liked since the beginning of the season. This past weekend, a little bit of an upset. I think they're going to come out angry. I think they're going to come out mad. and they're going to take it out on West Florida. I'm taking West Georgia at home this week.
Okay. All right, Chris.
I agree. This is hard to pick. I mean, we've seen West Florida put up points, and we also kind of seen them in a lull. I was really surprised with what happened with West Georgia, but I think that's kind of everybody's take. Still, I think that West Georgia is probably going to pull this one out. I really do.
Okay. Whit.
I don't think that we've seen West Florida's best yet. They're working through with a newer quarterback and things like that, and trying to find their way. I think that their ceiling's pretty high. I'm going to take West Florida to respond well in this game and maybe show some of their best football.
I'm actually going to do the same with West Florida for me, Chuck.
I'm going to go West Florida here as well. I can't argue with the takes on picking West Georgia. I think, that's an attractive pick here, but I think you practice a little bit better when you're learning from a win that was a little bit underwhelming than a loss that was kind of shocking. So I think West Florida will have a better week of practice and win this game.
Okay. Devin.
Give me West Florida.
Okay. Then our final game is IUP at California. And Chris, I think you're going to pick first.
IUP.
Okay. All right, Matt.
I think this is a must-win for Cal. I think they can be explosive offensively. I'm going to take them at home.
Okay. This is a tough one because I agree with you. I'm going to pick Cal as well. Chuck. Wait, Chuck, you want me to come to you last since you're you would be the only person who lives in Pennsylvania? You want me to come to you last?
Sure.
Okay. Let's go to Devin.
Sure.
I really want to know who Devin picks before I make my pick.
Exactly. I had the right answer here. And I went with them last week, and they didn't let me down, so I'm taking IUP again.
Okay.
Taking 4 road teams, and the Northwest is the only road team I'm not taking. So
Justin.
I agree with you, Whit. I think this is a must-win for Cal, but I'm going to take IUP on the road.
Okay. All right. And Chuck.
Well, I am picking IUP. I think that they have a very high ceiling, and although they've been playing well, I don't think we've even seen their full potential yet. But I do want to go back to something that I mentioned earlier in the show when we were talking with Coach Tort. In the same position last year, IUP coming off the big win over Slippery Rock, California got them the week after.
Yeah.
And Coach Tort even mentioned that was a 2-loss game because they dropped that one to Cal, and then they came out really flat the week after. So I think that is very fresh in their memories. Coach Tort even said he's going to be talking about that. So I think they will be focused, and I think they will be ready, and I think that they'll get the win.
Tony, I think I missed you on your did I miss you on West Florida and West Georgia?
Yeah, you did. And that's okay since I don't really remember this anyway.
I'm at 80%, and that's not good enough. So
I think I'm on the West Florida bandwagon for that one. Again, I'm really suspect about West Georgia's inconsistency on offense, and I agree. West Florida's probably got more than what we've seen. And then as far as this last game, man, it's hard for me to disagree with Chuck just because he's he knows those teams so closely expert. But man, there's just something about the way Cal's played in bigger games this year. Even though they lost to Shepherd, I still felt like that was a game they probably could have won or should have won. And I don't know, just seems like a letdown spot for me from IUP. So I'm just going to take a stab at Cal.
Okay, all right. That is all. We'll see how we do next week. Again, going to remind everybody to like and subscribe. Follow us on social media. You can get us on Facebook or Twitter or YouTube, as you see. Everybody watching right now is on one of those. So we have columnists for almost every conference, including all the guys in here. And scores and all that stuff you can find on game days. So speaking of that, I wanted to thank Sam and Jared for an outstanding job they did on scores yesterday. And also want to thank Kello TV and Mark School Jr. For the use of their videos today. And also wanted to special thank Matt and Chuck for carrying a lot of the load this week on the site and with the show, as I've not been feeling that good. And this is, in many ways, in the past, has been a one-man operation. And I'm the only person who knows how to turn a lot of the keys, but both these guys have really learned how to do it. And I just wanted to thank them for their help and for stepping up and making sure that you all still get D2 information and all of that good stuff. So I wanted to thank you guys. Let's go ahead and start looking at some questions. Hold up just a second. I'll pull this down. Chuck, if you guys want to, or anybody wants to go ahead and start some questions. I picked a couple.
I tagged a few. There was a lot of conversation about some stuff with regional rankings. I think we're still a few weeks away from
let me handle that, Chuck. Okay, it's way too early to even worry about that crap. And the only reason you would even look at it is if you have some weird fascination with numbers or something like that. It's just there's no reason, there's not enough data stuff at this point of the season.
We start thinking about results and how they might play out towards the end of the season in week 1, but to really start thinking about who's in, who's out right now, let's let that play out a little.
2 weeks with 2 weeks left, you run the numbers and things can make some sense. But with 3 weeks left, there's too many things that could happen for it to make any sort of sense whatsoever.
Too many variables.
Right.
Some of these folks who are asking these questions, man, they should know better than to rile you up with this, let alone when you're not feeling the best, man. Come on, that's
all good.
They should get knocked out for a week or something.
All right.
Is there any more triggered questions in the chat?
Well, so I think Brandon feels about regional rankings in week 5. How much people feel about preseason rankings, just in general, like top 25. Like it doesn't matter at all to him. So he's like, who cares?
So let's go ahead and look at this one because I think it's fun for you, Whit. Again, it's a silo schedule. How much risk if both Augustana and Sioux Falls run the table? Is it possible Augustana will be left out as a one-loss?
0%.
0 chance. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if you take a look at that. If you take a look at the last few seasons in SR4, a 3-loss team was getting in.
Plus, Colorado Mines already has 2.
Right. Yeah. I actually did have a coach at the game yesterday, Sioux Falls and Augustana, who did ask me. They said, when did they start figuring out all that playoff stuff? And I said, that's not for till week 8. It's still a good ways off. So, but
when week 8 comes around, there's one of the members of our board, dude named Inkblot, does some great work, and we will look at his numbers because I trust his more than anybody else. It's just way too early to even worry about that. Right.
Yeah. There's so much meat left on the bone, but in regard to the Northern Sun, I mean, Northern Sun has gotten 3 teams in the playoffs the last handful of years, it seems, and 2 and 3 losses. So 1 loss for if Augustana were to roll and USF were to as well. I mean, they're probably both playing a home game, I would imagine, at that point. So,
all right. So Calvin wants to know who's the most surprising team so far. He thinks it's Benedict. Calvin's a great viewer. I think he's here every week. Love you, buddy.
Every week.
Yeah. So, anybody want to take a stab at this?
I'll go. Sorry, go ahead, Chris.
No, please, after you.
We talked about him a little bit earlier.
I knew you were going to pick.
I'll go Limestone for sure.
That's exactly what I thought you'd pick.
And I'll throw out some love for Emery and Henry. A lot of people still don't even know their name. It's their first year in Division II, transferring from D3. They've been very impressive in the SAC so far. Had the close OT loss to Newberry. They beat Wingate, thumped Catawba this past weekend. So, hey, they're here. They're a factor in the SAC, and it's good to see.
I had a thought because we were kind of being critical of some teams for their small margins of victory over Emory and Henry, and then they keep playing well, and you're like, maybe we were wrong, or at least I think maybe I was wrong in not giving Emory and Henry
I think
a little credit.
I think the win over Catawba was actually a really good barometer because Newberry is going to have a bad game or two every year. You kind of know that. Wingate can kind of do the same thing. Catawba would actually have been a team that I would have thought is a good barometer for Emory and Henry at the start of the season when everybody's 0-0. Like, how do they measure up with a team like Catawba? Because Catawba is not that good right now. So if Emory and Henry can compete with them, that's a good baseline. Well, they pretty much ran them off the field.
Yep. All right. Calvin also had another one. I think it's an interesting one. Other than Valdosta State, who's the most disappointing team to the first half of the season?
West Texas.
Lots of measurement.
What's that, Chris?
That's hard to measure up against. I mean, the level of disappointment there is pretty high.
For directory, a few up your alley. Bowie, West Texas.
Well, Bowie, I think.
Any other schools that you hold degrees from that you'd like to mention?
Well, Bristol State.
but I mean, really, I mean, yeah. But honestly, I mean, I don't want to pile on, but Winston-Salem State is definitely a team that I would go to, and I know that the bar wasn't that high for them this year, but still,
it was still play homecoming high.
So I want to.
They were dodging Lincoln. I mean, come on.
Right.
Still play homecoming high.
The last question, right, about surprising teams, Lincoln was in that piece for me because they really hadn't won a lot of games. And then Winston State, for homecoming and canceling that because supposedly of the weather, right, playing Lincoln. And I was actually going to write a piece predicting Lincoln was going to win that game. So, yeah, it's gotten pretty bad over there. And West Texas,
I think
I agree.
For a guy, I think also, Pueblo. I think a lot of people thought, hey, Pueblo had one down year. They're going to be back up again. And kind of really hasn't been that way. And so, you take a look at some teams like that, obviously with the teams that we mentioned. And, I mentioned, earlier, I think last week, that with Valdosta only having 2 defensive players coming back, I mean, there was a part of me that thought maybe we should have seen this coming a little bit more, like with Mankato the year previous when they were 6-5, because Mankato had that same exact issue, except this one with Valdosta had a wholesale coaching change. And, maybe Gary Goff knew what he was doing when he got out when he did.
Yeah.
Yep.
So if anybody sees a column on D2 that's like scathing Winston-Salem with my name on it, it was K. Ferg who wrote it. It just him.
I'm with you on Pueblo Wit, and I'll also throw in there. It almost more makes me sad as Michigan Tech. They were picked to finish 3rd by the coaches in the preseason poll in the GLEAK. There was a lot of talk about them being sneaky good, and they just cannot move the ball. Their only win is against a middle WEAC team, D3 team out of Wisconsin. They've really struggled against teams that you just wouldn't expect them to thus far. They got a long season brewing up there in Houghton.
Tony, we mentioned the term like a two-loss game a couple times today. I kind of wonder if that loss at Midwestern State in dramatic fashion just kind of had some spillover effect for them.
I agree.
Can I just throw out one other team that probably isn't on the radar there? Southeastern Oklahoma.
Yeah, that's a good observation, Chris.
Yeah, especially with them losing to Southern Nazarene and kind of getting into shootouts. Southwestern Oklahoma. I mean, I just thought they were going to take that next step and at least kind of take on either Henderson or maybe Ouachita, maybe Harding, and 2 of those 3 they've lost to as well. So they're sitting below 500, and we were talking about them possibly in the top 25 to start the season.
Yeah, it's a good point. I'd forgotten about them. But Southwestern is a team to talk about as one of the surprises. They're 3-2. They won 3 of the last 4. Remember, they were winless last year. So great for them.
So, all right, let's go ahead and pull this one back up. So Valdosta gets blown out by Delta. Does it diminish Virginia Union's win?
No. I say no.
I don't think so either. I don't think so either because Virginia Union beat the undefeated Valdosta team.
Right.
They did not beat
on the road.
Right. They did not. Yes, good point. They did not beat a Valdosta team that questions itself. They did not beat a Valdosta team that doubts itself. They did not
put the doubts there.
Valdosta State team with bad momentum. It's 2 different teams. That's one of the other things that irritates me, that people think, we beat you this year, so we are better than you. No, you were better in that 3-hour period that you played. But it's possible if you played that game at 6 instead of 1, that the outcome would have been completely different. It's the craziness of sports, but there are a few things that are absolute in sports, and again, that's kind of railing on the transitive property and all that. I think
I love it.
That is another thing that irks me too.
But
I think I might have already.
Hold up, Brandon. Justin had a point.
Yeah.
Going back to that. I think if Valdosta if it continues to go downhill and they don't finish, if they don't finish the season out, I think it does, right? Like if they finish below 500, I think it does. So
it's a different look at that point.
Yeah,
sure, exactly,
sure,
yeah.
Right, I understand. Kind of the way we might view a win over Emory and Henry differently than we would have at the beginning of the year, since we said, hey, they're doing pretty good. I got you
at the end of it, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
I just want to mention the other part of that question. The other teams look very beatable on paper. Mm-hmm. Virginia State's 4-1, and Bowie State's got they got an offense if they can stop the turnovers at 3-2. So they're going to be tough outs. So Virginia Union has not had a lot of luck against Bowie State in the past. They came in, they were 25th like a couple of years ago in the poll, and Bowie State ran them out of the stadium. I mean, it's a little bit different look for Bowie State, but they're still dangerous, and so is Virginia Union at the end of the regular season. So I would just be a little careful there.
Okay. All right. I think I might have addressed this one already. I don't think they're relevant. The numbers are relevant at this point. Yeah. I think it's much more important to focus on simply wins and losses at this point of the season. I'm going to give everybody my opinion on this one first. Not only do I not think it should be expanded to 32, I think it should be retracted back to 24. I think number 1 and 2 seeds in every region should get a bye. I think it's far too arbitrary to give number 1 a bye and not number 2. And that's my opinion on it. So I think they should do that. And in addition, I think the football season should be 12 weeks long to play 11 games. So I think both those byes are good for player health, at least for 2 teams. 2 teams that would theoretically be expected to go the farthest in the playoffs in each region. And a bye somewhere in the middle of the season would be good for player health. They won't do it because of expense. It used to be built in. You used to be able to start before the 1st of September. Right. I preferred it that way. But just like anything, they're cutting costs, and that was a way to cut cost, was to have start a week later, and you didn't have to pay for housing and meals, et cetera, et cetera. Does anybody else have a differing opinion? You're allowed to disagree with me.
Nothing to add.
I have an opinion that there should be an 11-game season at a minimum. Each team, each conference should be required to play 11. That's my only right there, because that's a personal. That is a very personal, near and dear issue to me.
Right, I understand. Yeah, I agree. Play. I was thinking about that the other night when there were some years when you were better off to play. You had been better off to play 10 games and not play that out of conference game and pick up that loss. You'd been better to be 8-2 than you were 8-3. And it's crazy that sometimes you get rewarded for not playing a game, and I think that goes along with what you said, Chris. All right, and finally, the last one. Unless you guys see any more, there are 22 new ones that I don't see. So Sean is a West Florida guy. It's hard to understand all the attention Northwest and the MIAA get. Well, Sean, the answer to this is that it is a good thing that we are covering Division II and running this, because we understand the history of it. I agree that the MIAA is not the best conference in the country this year. It does have the ability to be that in certain years. Having said that, Northwest Missouri has won more national championships than anybody, and
they're in the playoffs every year.
They haven't missed the playoffs since 2003. I think Devin was not even born the last time they missed him. So
I was a resounding 8 years old.
Yes, but nonetheless,
barely.
I understand that everybody's kind of hyper focused on where they're at, but I know you don't understand it, but it's legitimate. The attention.
I mean,
Probably,
the MIAA, the Gulf South, the GLEAK, they're going to get a little more attention just because they have some more of the top teams historically there. So they're going to get more attention anyways than other teams and other conferences, just kind of the way it is with it. The CIAA is improving, but they're not quite there yet, so they don't get as much attention as the Gulf South. The GAC doesn't get as much attention. The Harding and Washington have been good last few years as the MIAA because Pitt and Northwest have the national championship kind of deal. Just the way, as you talked about in the top 25 poll, it's harder to gain respect over time compared to losing respect whenever you don't earn it at that point. So that's just the way it is, kind of. Unfortunately, we try to do our best to curb that, but it is what it is.
Well, and on top of all of that, the MIAA, sorry, Chris, the MIAA year in and year out, when they got teams in, they invariably would win at least a game. So that's the other piece of it. I mean, you know, Brandon, you're talking about all the titles that they've won. That belies how many just playoff games that MIAA teams won. And that's what builds that conference credibility over a period of time. It takes a lot longer it's pretty quick to diminish it. It takes forever to build it. So, I mean, it's you have to kind of pay some homage to that and have reverence for it because it was so hard to earn. You know, I mean, I think it took the GLEAK a long time for it to gain that additional credibility that it's earned because it took Saginaw Valley doing some things in the playoffs. It took Ferris doing some things in the playoffs. It took somebody other than Grand Valley doing all the work that they did in the aughts to actually gain that credibility for the league. So it's just 100%. It's one of those things that takes time to build. And the Gulf South has a ton of reverence and continues to. So I mean, it's not like they're getting shortchanged by any means.
And it should, and the Gulf South should. So
Brandon, from 2011 to 16? What was that? 4 MIAA national championships, Pitt, and then 3 Northwest ones. Is that right?
That is correct. Yeah.
Right. How many has West Florida won? I'll wait.
I know. No, and this is not to slam on West Florida, but I got where you're going with that. You know, the thing I thought was this. All right, I saw West Florida play in the national championship game in 2017. Right? That was 17 against Commerce, right?
Right.
I believe so. Okay. Yeah.
Right. Northwest Missouri lost in the first round that year to Ashland. Northwest Missouri would have beat West Florida. There's zero doubt in my mind.
Right.
In that, you know, that season. So. I understand. And, you know, and it's like, it doesn't really matter if one person thinks they're not as good as another. It doesn't. We all have different opinions and it doesn't matter. But there's a reason that we talk about it the way that we do. And that reason is because we've been following it for a while and really kind of understand the magnitude of it all, you know. And, you know, it's, you know, Tony, you were saying something earlier that had something pop in my head. You know, it does take, Devin said this earlier, I've said it previous times, it takes a long time to get respect. It's delayed. It should become a little faster than it does. But really when it happens is when that second conference team does something. Like in the RMAC. Let's take the RMAC. So Pueblo wins the national championship in 14. They got lucky. You know, they beat a sick Mankato team. But when Mines makes that run last year and almost beats Valdosta, it changes the perception a little bit. So it really takes that second team, which is why the Gulf South has a great, you know, there's a great, you know, it has a great reputation because not only does it have West Florida who's won one, Delta who has won one, you know, West Georgia's made some runs, but it has teams that have reclassified and are no longer with us that were great national champions, like North Alabama and then Jackson State. You know, all over history. That's, you know, so, you know, theoretically, what's the Gulf South been? West Florida winning one, and then they've lost a couple national championships. So if you know, even if you compare conference to conference, the Gulf South, you would question why are they getting the run because they've only won one in the X amount of time. So. Anyway, it doesn't matter, and these disagreements are why this is fun. I mean, you know, it's fun to talk about stuff. So, all right, do you guys see any more comments or questions that we need to take? I do not see that. All right, guys, I think that is going to do it for tonight. And again, thank you all for watching. I want to thank Chuck, Whit, Kafer, Devin, Justin, Tony, thank you guys for being here. We will see you next week on Inside D2 Football.
Go Chiefs.